Hi and welcome to today's podcast, everybody. You're listening to the Kuno podcast and/or Tea with Marie, whichever one you want to make it, because I've got tea next to me today. I have got with me Juachi, and she is a certified life coach. How are you doing?
Good. I'm really happy and excited to be here. How are you?
I am fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to hearing all about life coaching, because obviously this is one of the big things that's out there at the minute in articles and in the news. So do you want to just begin by telling us kind of who you are, how you got where you are, and what it is that you do?
Of course, thank you. So, as Marie said, I'm Juachi, everyone. So, I kind of wear two hats, really, if I'm being honest. I work as a risk consultant, which a lot of people don't know. The second part of me is, as you said, I'm a certified life coach and the founder of Journey with Ju. For those who don't know, life coach is someone who pretty much helps you get to your goals, your personal goals, whatever they may be. Um, and Journey with Ju is all about empowering women, helping you harness that inner critic and any limiting patterns or beliefs in order for you to reach those goals. But yeah, that's pretty much what I do and where I'm from.
That's really interesting that you're balancing
Mm,
being a risk consultant with a life coach. How do you manage
yes,
that?
it's not easy, I'll be honest. But like you said, it's all about balance. It's about prioritizing where necessary, having a routine, having a to-do list. That's literally my safe haven. And just pretty much splitting my time equally between what needs attention, really. So it's all
So
about
being
balance.
mega
It's all about
organized
balance.
then, yeah.
Mega, super organized. I kind of have to be. But yeah, I'm getting the hang of it. It wasn't easy at first, but slowly but surely.
So what gave you the inspiration to move from risk consultancy to life coaching? Because that's quite a big difference in career.
Very. It does have some similarities, I'll be honest, but because you deal with people on both side of things. But how long do you have? Because my story is a long story. I'll keep it as short as possible. Prior to the job I currently work 9 to 5, I was working at this company that I loved. When I started, I loved my manager. I loved everything about it. I was there for about 4 years, and halfway through, I switched roles, and this new role literally gave me nightmares. I hated everything about it. I was miserable. I would literally complain to my friends, my family about it, and they'd be like, "Why don't you just leave? Like, there's so many opportunities," and I'd always say no. It's not the right time, and come up with an excuse. And I remember at the time, the company used to contract this life coach to come in and take us on as clients as a perk. And at the time, I didn't even know what life coaches did, if I'm being completely honest, but I was always intrigued. So I was like, okay, I'll try this. And honestly, it was very transformational for me. She played such a vital role in the way I process my thoughts, in the way I see myself today. And the one thing that stood out to me was the fact that I had so many dreams of helping people and doing more with my life, but I just didn't have the confidence to pursue them. So, long story short, I worked together with her for months, and I finally got to a place where I got the confidence to leave that role and to apply for new jobs and to pursue the career that I always wanted, to help people. I just didn't know how I wanted to do that. And that's something she helped me do. And the one thing I also realized was that I was scared deep down. I was scared that if I applied for a new role, no one was going to accept me. And even if they did, I felt that halfway through my next job, they might find out, oh, she's not actually all she made herself out to be. And long story short, again, I figured that I was actually suffering from imposter syndrome at that point, and that's something that my life coach helped me find out. So the difference that she made in my life is something that I wanted to do the same for other people. And she helped me discover that passion that I had. So I went on, did my training to become a certified life coach, and voila, here I am talking to you about it now, a few years later. But that is the very short, condensed version, I promise you.
Well, congratulations on taking that leap, because I think for a lot of people that's a massive leap. And it's interesting what you say actually about it took you months to kind of figure that you wanted to move from the safe kind of role that you were in and explore what you knew you wanted to do. But also, as part of that, there's potentially imposter syndrome. So How does
Mm.
that kind of, because that seems quite a catalyst right there that we could talk
Yeah.
about. How do you get from being safe and feeling like an imposter to changing your mindset entirely to be open to new opportunities and to take that leap?
As you said, it's a leap. It requires a lot of work. And there's so many ways that, because first of all, imposter syndrome is something that no one is immune to. A lot of people suffer. In fact, I think the statistics are that 70 to 80% of people will encounter imposter syndrome at some point in their lives. And for those that can't recognize that, it's that feeling of, not being good enough, having that self-doubt, feeling like you haven't truly earned your accomplishments and you're a fraud and someone's going to catch you out. And there are a lot of different techniques that I used over that period. And I'm happy to share that with you if that's okay. So the first thing I say is, that inner voice in your head that's like, oh, you're not good enough. You're not beautiful enough. You have to get to know that voice. What's the one thing that people say about your enemies? Get to know them better. Why? So that you can know how to conquer it and you can know how to manage it better. So something that I do, and I encourage all my clients to do, is journaling. That's the number one thing about how I get to know that. When does it show up? What are you doing? What does it look like? That just puts a bit of distance between you and that inner voice, that inner critic within you. And that's the first pattern of becoming more self-aware. The next stage is to challenge that voice. Like in my case, I had proof, I had evidence that I was good enough. I had degrees, I had work experience, everything. But you have to challenge that voice. If you need to talk to it, talk to it. Obviously, in your room or in a closed space, not out in public, so people don't think you're crazy. But speak to the voice every time it says, for example, what makes you think you can do it? Challenge it with times where you have indeed succeeded. And the third thing I'd say is people are like, well, what if I've actually failed in the past? So what? Yes, there might be times that you've actually failed at something, but it doesn't then become a fact about you. You don't then become not good enough or become a failure. We have to learn to, isolate those failed incidents from your identity and isolate that and look at the story of any successful person. Look at Beyonce. I love Beyonce and I love, I love everything she represents. But look at her. She would, I was watching a video of her where she said, I failed 26 times. She's also failed, you know. Everybody has failed and will fail at some point in their lives. So it's just normalizing that and understanding that that is a stepping stone to your success story, essentially. So these are the things that I kind of learned on my journey to managing it and managing that imposter within me.
How do you kind of figure out if something's for you or it's not? Because there's that thing that says, well, you tried 26 times and the 27th is the one where you succeeded, but you might have given up at the 12th and you might have said, oh, this is not for me. I'm just going to stop now and do something different. How do you kind of figure out whether you should keep going or not?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And honestly, I think first of all, self-awareness is everything. That's my first thing. It's about learning, it's about reflecting on those experiences. After each failed experience, what are you doing? Are you just launching right back into it, hoping that things change and doing the same thing over and over again? The one thing I always say is reflect on that failed experience. What did you do well? What didn't you do well? And always ask for feedback. That allows you and that gives you some level of objectivity over that failed experience. Doing the same thing over and over again will give you the same results. So it's about taking a step back, analyzing the situation, and there's a bit of wisdom and intuition that also comes into it as well. Go with your gut feeling, but also have that objective view out there for you to be able to make that decision. It's not black and white, really. But
Do
yeah.
you believe in like the power of the universe that kind of like shows you signs? So if you're supposed, like I was doing some interviews on journaling because I was interested in journaling, and all of a
Okay.
sudden everybody was talking about journaling, and I was like, maybe this is the interview I should be doing. So are there
Yeah.
kind of, if you look out there, are there signs to tell you actually not, don't give up yet because you've still got further to go on this path?
I I believe in the law of attraction, right? If you attract positive things, that's I guess that's the situation I believe in. If you put it out there, it'll come back to you more or less. If you speak positivity, you receive positivity. If you put it out to the universe, you receive that. It's the same thing. I know what you mean there. It's like you see a car and you're like, oh, I like this car. And the next day you start seeing the car everywhere. I
Exactly.
think it's all part of the law of attraction. Once you put it out there, you start to notice those things even more and you start to attract those things even more. So yeah, 100%. I believe in that as well. It happens to me as well. It's quite fascinating actually. But yeah.
So on imposter syndrome, um, I think nearly everybody's got this, even when they're in a situation where they know that, the other people know about as much as they do and there's no real authority on the situation. How can you kind of get past those feelings of probably inadequacy and underconfidence? I mean, there's a lot kind of wrapped up into imposter syndrome. How do you pick it
Mm.
apart and then, kind of work on it to get over it?
Yeah. So using those tips I mentioned earlier in terms of getting to know that voice, challenging that voice, separating those things and identifying what causes it and what triggers it for you are so, so, so important. And sometimes I think a lot of us struggle with figuring that out by themselves. And that's why, not because I'm a life coach, but that's why I would recommend speaking to a life coach about it or someone who's in that position to help you on that journey. Because essentially what we do is I like to describe myself as, providing like a mirror for your thoughts. I feed back what you give me, what your thoughts are saying. I feed that back to you so you can hear yourself. And it's about treating yourself as well with some compassion and understanding that, would I speak to myself the way others speak to me? Would I speak to myself the way I would love for others to speak to me or the way I speak to other people? If you think, I was watching this video of this little girl and these two sisters essentially, and one was saying, I feel like I'm ugly, I feel like this, and the guy was like, tell your sister that. You wouldn't speak to your sister that way, so don't speak to yourself that way. So it's about having compassion for yourself as well. I think is very, very, very important. But the first thing I'll say is speak to someone, speak to a life coach. And if you prefer not to, then try those 3 tips I gave earlier in terms of journaling, getting to know it, separating those incidents and challenging that voice within you. Those are I think that's the starting point for that journey of managing imposter syndrome.
And how can you kind of go on to build more confidence? Because I think building confidence within a personal role and in a professional role is completely different. And I think it can depend where you are professionally as well as to whether you feel confident, and it can kind of go in peaks and troughs. How can we become maybe a bit more resilient or confident about how we are both personally and professionally?
That's yeah, that's a good question. I think confidence is built on yourself. That work can only be done from you. It's not about what anyone else is doing. I think in this day and age of social media, our confidence level is fueled a lot by what everybody else is doing, by that comparison. And that doesn't influence your worth or your value. And I think that's where your confidence comes from. Your self-worth and your self-value is influenced based on how you see yourself. So I think the more you work on yourself, the more you're trying to grow personally, the more your confidence goes up. So if you're struggling with, oh, I don't, for example, if let me use your career, for example, I don't feel like I know enough about this. I don't feel confident to speak up in certain settings. It's about, okay, what do I need to do to gain that knowledge to get me there? As opposed to, oh, I see this person and this person is more intelligent than I am. No, they're probably not. Is that, have you put in the work that you need to be able to get to that level? And in your personal life, it's kind of like, I don't feel like I look a certain way or feel a certain way. Who are you comparing yourself to? Why do you feel like there have to be standards of beauty because society has set that? So it's about looking inward and it's about increasing your own self value about how you see yourself. And that's literally a personal growth equals confidence. Your confidence level goes all the way up. That's
And,
what I usually say. Yeah.
and that's one of the hardest things to do, because
Yes.
you can say stop comparing yourself to the magazines and the social media, but I think we all sit there and look at it and say, oh, I'd like to be a bit thinner, or why can't I be a bit more like this, or have longer hair, or do
Mm.
whatever. And but the thing is, even and this is something that happens in professional life as well, where you get to a point where you actually get that and you're still not
Yeah.
happy because actually you're not fulfilling yourself, you're just fulfilling an idea of what you think you should be. Are there
Mm,
any kind of we've talked about journaling and that kind of thing, but are there any
mm.
more kind of ways where we can pull out our internal values and what we need to satisfy ourselves rather than chasing after a dream that is not going to satisfy us and is potentially not even real?
Yeah. Very good question again. I think gratitude is a big one for me as well. I think if you're constantly chasing something, then you're constantly not recognizing what you already have. So practicing gratitude is something that I think is a very, very good exercise, even if it's on a daily basis. Point out three things that you're grateful for, three things that you have already. And you'll notice that the more you start to recognize the things you have, the more you start to appreciate them. And even I know you mentioned earlier, like you rightly said, comparison is so it's not easy. It's actually a journey in itself. But one thing I'd say is, as opposed to comparing, use that as motivation for yourself. If you see something that, for example, oh my God, this person has an amazing body, I want a body like that. Sitting there and looking at that body and comparing yourself is not going to get you that body. If you want that for yourself, if you desire that for yourself, then use that as motivation to get yourself there, as opposed to just sitting idle and comparing yourself. So that's the one thing I'd say: motivation and gratitude. Those two things combined should help you get there as well.
There's an interesting problem there, isn't there? Because if you sit there and you keep comparing yourself, you can get more and more bitter and more resentful, and you can get more of a toxic headspace. But if you go out and you try to get that identical body, you might be trying so hard that you actually end up in a toxic headspace. So,
Yeah.
how do you kind of almost get to the midpoint where you're happy and you've got what you've got, but it's not you're not just sat there and you're out actually doing something about it, because at some point in your belief system you realize you want this, but you're not going so far that you're just you're taking it to a whole new level where you're trying to be something that you're not. That, to me,
Mm,
that whole identity and self-value part of it seems a really very
yeah.
difficult place to get to, even for somebody that is very good at self-awareness. Is there anything that you can kind of say to our listeners on that point?
Self-worth, honestly, I 100% agree with you. You can look there, you can get there. For me, what that shows me is that there's something you're lacking within yourself. It's not about looking at anybody else. It's not even about the comparison. It's inward, and everything is inward. And I think if you can't recognize your worth, you're always going to suffer from this. You're always going to compare yourself. You're always going to not feel as content as you possibly should be. So I think that requires deeper work. You have to ask yourself those questions. Why do I feel this way? Why am I looking at this person? What about this person? What void am I trying to fill within myself? And you have to ask those. You're the only one that can answer those questions. And until those questions are answered, you can't really move forward. It's never going to change. So I think this specific thing of self-worth is a journey in itself. It's not there's no black and white answer. Do this and then your self-worth comes in there. It's just about understanding that your story is your story. You're the only one that can write that story for yourself. You're the only one that can change that for yourself. So you have to get to a place where you answer these questions first within yourself before you can start gaining self-worth. It's not going to come from anything around you. It's not going to come from any material things or anything that looks beautiful or whatever it is that you're comparing yourself to. You have to see yourself in a certain way. And I know I mentioned gratitude earlier, but I think gratitude is so important. If you start to see that, oh my God, I actually have this quality about myself that I like, you start to see it flourish even more. And that's also down to that law of attraction thing. You're seeing it, you're appreciating it, it's growing within you, and your value within you is also growing. So I think it's a combination of things, and it's a journey in itself. There's no black and white answer for that. Unfortunately, how easy would it have been if there was? Yeah.
I think some of these things that we're talking about, you could spend years on and never get to that level, because there's just so many layers of stuff that you need to get through to get to the point where you can even discuss with yourself some of these questions.
Mm.
Um, do you think because I've not talked about really vision boards recently, and I was thinking that's quite an interesting concept. What's your opinion on a vision board?
I like it. I love vision boards. I like mood boards. I like vision boards. Anything visual boards. I love them. I think it's a visualization is something that's so powerful. It's just about seeing everything you want for yourself out there. And it's if you constantly keep looking at these things, that's motivation in itself. It's like on days where you wake up and you're like, oh, you know what, I can't be bothered to do that. And you look up and you see a vision board, you're like, yes, okay, this is, remind me why I'm doing this again. This is exactly why I'm doing this again. You put a big house and you're like, okay, I need to get up and grind, get that money to get that big house. It's so powerful. It's more powerful than even psyching yourself up all the time when you just see it right there. So I like that. I like I like vision boards. I think they're very powerful.
I used a vision board 10 years ago, and I wrote down a list of what I wanted my life to look like.
Yeah.
And I did this and I thought, it'll never work. It'll never come to anything. And I went back to it, I think it was 4 years later, and I ticked off every single thing on that list in that vision board.
Wow. See? There you
Yeah.
go. This is a live example.
That is how
That's amazing.
powerful that
It
is.
is
When
very
you
powerful.
visualize it, you will receive it.
Definitely, no, 100%. And I think what we feed our eyes, what we feed our mind is so, so important. If you keep feeding your mind with the right things, with the things that you want to attract, you'll start seeing that more. It's just the way life goes, essentially. But yeah, that's incredible.
It's
I'm sure you're
amazing,
gonna
isn't it?
grow a bigger one next year.
I don't think I've got anything left to achieve after that one. It was pretty long.
Wow, that's amazing. You need to show me your vision board. I need to see what exactly you do so I can draw mine in the same way. Maybe there's something about yours.
It was just so weird. I was like, how does that even happen? Like all the
Yeah.
different areas of my life I put on it and they'd all changed. And I was thinking that's unbelievable. So
Yeah.
actually it's been a while since I've done one. So I probably need to do one again.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
actually now my vision's changed. It's less about what I think I should be trying to get and more about what I actually want to get.
yeah, I say it's a live document. You switch and change it up as much and as often as you want it to be. What I tend to do is at the beginning of the year, I actually write down the things I want to achieve. I write them down on an Excel spreadsheet, literally family, life, relationships, friendships, every as granular as possible. And as I go through every month, I literally take, okay, this has happened, this has happened, this is yet to happen. And it's just there for you to keep track of your life as well as wish these things into existence and hope that they happen. It's very powerful.
I really like that as an alternative to New Year's resolutions, actually. Write down the wish
Yeah,
list and then go through it every month and see what you've ticked off. Because New Year's resolutions are like, oh, let me get in the gym on January the 2nd and get a thin
they
body
don't
and
last.
eat vegan. And it's like if you did like a vision list for the year and then you
Yeah,
worked on it, that seems to me like might achieve more.
yeah. I don't, I personally have given up on New Year's resolutions. I don't do them anymore. I found that exactly what you said. Halfway through January, I've forgotten all about them. Like, what was my New Year's resolution again? I can't keep up with them. I prefer like realistic, actual, okay, by year end, and I put timelines as well. By the first quarter, I want to have achieved this, I want to have done this. And I make them very, very practical things and things that I can pick up on a day-to-day basis and put into my routine. So I prefer to call them my goals as opposed to New Year's resolutions, although they're kind of one of the same thing, to be honest. But yeah, I kind of like them.
I think
So
it's maybe the perception and the timeline. If you give yourself a year to achieve something, you've got
yeah,
time and you've got little milestones you can hit. If you say, right, my resolution is I want to be this, then there's no kind of plan of attack. It's just, well, I need to lose 10 stone and eat no meat and not drink and oh, what's
exactly.
life? Especially in January. I mean, in the
Yeah.
UK, if you started your resolutions in June or July, at least you've got some sunshine. But January is like
Yes. It's like dry January.
it's not the
It's like,
time.
no, not at all. It's not the time to be setting those things. No, but I understand what you mean. Goals are, yeah, I like setting goals. I can't function without having a goal that I'm working towards. It literally throws me off. And I don't know if you've heard of the SMART goals acronym, making this a specific is measurable, you put some timings in there, you make them realistic. That is how to set a goal essentially. And I find them very, very useful. And I use them in all aspects, even in my career. When they say your goal setting, I use them for that as well in my personal, as well as in my personal life as well. So I find them really useful.
One final question I wanted to kind of ask, because it intrigued me when you said it earlier, what you put in your mind. So I stopped listening to the news a long time ago. I stopped watching mainstream TV a long time ago. I read books. I watch things on Netflix that are educational. And obviously I've, guilty pleasures where, got something unrealistic and it's a nice kind of program and it's, flashy and whatnot. But that to me seems like a huge change in mindset, because you're actually feeding your mind with something completely different and something positive, where as if you watch kind of the news all the time, you're just getting fed a lot of negativity. So how can our listeners maybe go about feeding their mind well?
Yeah, especially in this COVID times, especially in these COVID times with everything that's happened, negative media, negative information, things that feeds, even social media, Instagram, looking at posts that don't make you feel okay. It is okay to unfollow. It's okay to block. It's okay to filter your feed, to make sure your mind, what you feed into all your senses is what your mind absorbs, is what your spirit absorbs, your heart absorbs. And that's what impacts your mindset, impacts your behaviors and everything, impacts your mental health. It has a lot of power. Even things that you scroll past and you think, oh, I'm not really paying that much attention to it. You'll notice that your mind keeps that in there. So it's about following only pages that you feel are actually giving your mental health, having a positive impact on your mental health rather. And it's about limiting, the negative media. Stay off the news if you know that you don't want to hear anything negative. If you feel like it's giving you anxiety, for example, there was a period during COVID that I stopped listening to the news because all I was seeing every day were 1,000 deaths, 2,000 deaths, and I physically couldn't hack it anymore. My mental health was suffering. So I just switched it off. I blocked all the news outlets on my Instagram. I was like, nope, no more. I've unblocked them now because I feel like now I can handle it again. But things like that, it's okay to do those things. And it's okay to protect your mind because it's so important. But yeah.
I do think if there's anything major that happens, I think we find out regardless of having scrolled the feed of BBC News all day. So I try and stay away from it, because I think I'm quite conscious that, like you said, you absorb all this stuff. Even if you're just scrolling past it, your subconscious picks it up.
Yep.
And it can carry on for days in your mind. It's not like your mind just gets rid of it or lets it go. It can carry on and it can turn into other things. So actually I think it's quite important to take care of your mindset in that way.
Yeah. Another thing I do as well, and I think I recommend doing, is every now and then just unplug from technology. Just take time off social media. Like there was a point last year, for a month, I literally didn't go on social media. At some point, I was like, no, I need a break. I actually just need to read a book, watch a TV show, just not scroll, because you don't realize how much time you're spending scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And if not for my business page, I'm like, I literally would go off it for like 2-3 months at a time. But that's another option. Unplug and come back when you feel more comfortable.
I love that. I love it. When you go on holiday and you put your phone away and that's it for 2 weeks and nobody can get hold of you. I love it.
It's beautiful. I love it. You need to just reset and refresh every now and then. It's so important as well.
Well, it's been an amazing chat and we're coming up to the end of the interview. So would you like to let people know where they can find you on the internet? And we will be putting everything down below so you can click on it and you can go straight through, but just let people have a quick overview of where they can find you.
Yeah, sure. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and my website as well. So just click on the links below. And look.
So it's all there. Click straight through. Go and find Juachi, and you can partake of all the different life coaching things that she has to offer. As you can see, she's an amazing life coach, so do go check her out. Thank you very much for being a guest today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much, Marie. I've really enjoyed this. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys.